Welcome, age of vintage society. If one actor could be taken as the personification of liberal America, it would have to be Henry Fonda. Fonda's acting, like his screen image, was built around an unpretentious honesty, a seemingly artless naturalism which concealed a good deal of hard work, in contrast to the two-fisted redneck persona of John Ford's other favourite protagonist, John Wayne. Fonda stood for a quiet, troubled decency. His was a figure of reasoned integrity, slow to anger, aiming always to overcome his opponents by persuasion rather than force, if humanly possible. Dreamy idealism emanated from his shy, gangling lope. Why Henry Fonda learned to lock his emotions inside. Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. Henry Fonda still resembles that gawky, naive, decent to the coy hayseed who stumbled and stuttered and blushed a path through the trail of the lonesome pine. You only live once. There are a number of Hollywood families that have left their mark on the film industry, from famous brothers like the Baldwins and the Wayanses, to parent-child pairings such as the Douglases and the Barrymores, to extended families like the Kurt Russell, Goldie Hawn, Kate Hudson triumvirate. But no one family has had such a large or lasting impact on Hollywood movies as the first family of film, the Fondas. The Fonda dynasty began with the patriarch Henry Fonda. A megastar during the golden age of Hollywood, Fonda is well known for his leading man roles in a variety of different types of films. He's one of the most recognisable Western actors ever, thanks to roles in films like Once Upon a Time in the West and My Darling Clementine. He starred in all-time classics such as 12 Angry Men and The Grapes of Wrath. He won an Oscar for his role in On Golden Pond, and he was ranked as the 6th greatest male star in Hollywood history by the American Film Institute, ahead of such luminaries as Clark Gable, Gregory Peck and John Wayne. Even if the name Fonda had ended its movie industry association with Henry, it still would carry a significant amount of weight. But of course, that's not the case. The Fonda dynasty consists of 3 generations of award-winning film actors, but there's much more to this family than their time in the Hollywood spotlight. Surely all families have hardships on some level, but the consequence of fame is that hordes of strangers are welcome to judge and pick apart your most intimate secrets. The Fondas weren't just movie stars, they were active in the social and political issues of their time, and still aren't afraid to use their voices for causes they care about. But even more scrutiny comes when you directly and unapologetically oppose authority. From the golden age of Hollywood, Henry Fonda, to today's octogenarian superwoman Jane Fonda, who has been both hated and revered, the first family of film has experienced more than their fair share of very public tragedy, controversy and estrangement from one another. Still, there is much to be fascinated with and admired about the Fondas. But the man behind the persona was very different, leading to complicated relationships with his children and a tumultuous marriage history. Just like his characters, he was just like him in life, someone who had a hard time expressing his feelings and his emotions. Henry Fonda is the senior member of one of Hollywood's most celebrated acting families. His childhood was downright bizarre. Born in 1905 in Nebraska, Fonda's parents were strict Christian Scientists. This meant the entire family didn't believe in doctors, and instead they learned to rely only on themselves for health matters and most other problems. They were raised to believe that if you're hurt or in pain, you cure it by praying. Crying was not acceptable. According to his children, Henry was very shy, and he was afraid to convey strong emotion off-screen. This wasn't the best environment for a young Henry, and the signs started to show early. He was the oldest of 3 children, born to William Brace Fonda and his wife, Huberta nee Janes. William Fonda worked as a printer. When Fonda was still an infant, the family moved to Omaha, where his father opened a print shop. As a child, Fonda liked to write, winning a short story contest when he was 10 years old. 2 years later, he began working in his father's shop after school. Fonda's father was a salesman, and he grew up in a Liberal Democrat household in the middle of the American heartland. The intense incident Henry's father exposed him to at such a young age influenced his disdain for violence and instilled a sense of duty in him to assist in fighting social injustice. William Fonda insisted that his son hold a job while in college, and Fonda held two. He worked as a physical education instructor at a settlement house and for the telephone company. Henry was known for taking very social justice-oriented roles, and his childhood may be a clue as to why. When Henry was 14 years old, he was taken by his father to witness the lynching and burning of a black man named Will Brown. Henry's films reflect his values. In the Oxbow Incident, a film that came out in the midst of World War II, his character even witnesses a lynching. Fonda was also known for taking roles for admirable reasons, regardless of the likelihood of box office success. Sometimes he would have to front some of his own funds to get films made, including for 12 Angry Men. Fonda was known for being a rather serious person and not always easy to get along with. His career reflects his personality rather well. As a prepubescent boy, Fonda's awkward stage was worse than most. Not only was he short for his age, he was horribly shy. After all, his sheltered upbringing hadn't given him a lot of practice in talking to strangers. He could barely look at a girl unless it was one of his sisters, and he learned to lock his emotions inside. As we'll see, this would have devastating consequences for Fonda later on. The early years of Fonda's life were taken up with all-American pursuits like sports, helping his father at his print plant, and majoring in journalism at the University of Minnesota. Then everything changed. By the time he was in his early 20s, Fonda had shot up to a strapping 6 feet tall, and the burgeoning hunk joined the Omaha Community Playhouse. He just started his acting career when his mother's friend Dodie Brando, mother of Marlon Brando, needed a young man to play the lead in You and I. He went east to perform with the Provincetown Players and Joshua Logan's University Players, an intercollegiate summer stock company, where he worked with Margaret Sullivan, his future wife, and began a lifelong friendship with Jimmy Stewart. Despite his inexperience, Fonda was cast as Ricky in You and I. Though initially unsure of himself, Fonda grew to love the experience. Soon he was spending a significant amount of time at the Playhouse, performing odd jobs such as ushering and set building. Fonda's father did not approve of his son's new career choice. He made Fonda take a job as a clerk in a credit company to support himself. Still, Fonda was cast in the lead role of Merton of the movies at the Playhouse in 1926 or 1927. When William Fonda attended a performance, he recognized his son's talent. Fonda got an early break in 1927 when he wrote a sketch for George Billings, a leading impersonator of former President Abraham Lincoln. The sketch featured a role for Fonda as Lincoln's secretary. "My goal," he once remarked, "is that the audience must never see the wheels go round, not see the work that goes into this. It must seem effortless and real." His achievement was to make goodness appear both likeable and credible, even if on occasion a touch priggish. There was a darker side to his character which rarely appeared on screen, although he was now and again cast in unsympathetic roles and even later in his career as villains. Fonda himself was well aware of this less amiable aspect. "I don't really like myself, never have. People mix me up with the characters I play. Perhaps for that reason he was only really happy while working. I was damn lucky I became an actor. Acting to me is putting on a mask. The worst torture that can happen to me is not having a mask to get in back of." In 1928, Fonda moved to New York City to pursue a professional acting career, and John Ford supplied Fonda with several of his best masks. He was a serenely heroic Wyatt Earp in the mythopoetic My Darling Clementine, and the emotional power of his Tom Joad in The Grapes of Wrath. Building skillfully on his own Midwest rural background lent validity to that film's populism. Ford also made shrewd use of Fonda's stuffier side, casting him against type as the stiff-necked martinet to John Wayne's easygoing subordinate in Fort Apache. With his air of melancholy determination, Fonda was ideally fitted for those films in which a lone individual reluctantly but doggedly resists the consensus: the protester against the lynching in Wellman's The Oxbow Incident, the dissenting conscience in Lumet's archetypal jury drama 12 Angry Men, the downbeat claustrophobic impact of Hitchcock's The Wrong Man, derived in great part from the intensity of Fonda's central performance. He could also play comedy, though the roles that came his way were far from his best. Sturge's The Lady Eve provided a sparkling exception, Fonda preserving an engaging solemnity in the face of Stanwyck's protean and wily adventuress. Integrity can become boring, and so at times could Fonda, especially in a bad film, of which he was cast in far too many. Twice in his career he fled from Hollywood entirely, into the Navy during the war, and then from 1948 to 1955, returning to his first and lasting love, the theatre. Parts were never lacking, but the films got duller, with Fonda filling stolid cameos as authority figures. As an actor, Fonda was making $150,000 a year, $2.3 million today. An enlisted married sailor made less than $1,600 a year, approximately $25,000 today, depending on a variety of factors. He married Margaret Sullivan. It's no wonder the couple separated after they had been married for only 2 months and divorced 2 years later in 1933, but they remained on friendly terms and even acted together in 1936's The Moon's Our Home. Fonda met his second wife, socialite Frances Seymour Brokaw, on the set of the film Wings of the Morning in England in 1936. Their daughter Jane was born in 1937 and son Peter in 1940. During the marriage, Fonda served in the US Navy and was awarded the Bronze Star Medal. Between Fonda's acting career and his Navy service, the couple spent much time apart, but other factors played a role in their unhappy union. Frances Ford Seymour was a Canadian socialite from an aristocratic family. She was a distant relative of King Henry VIII's third wife, Jane Seymour, whom daughter Jane Fonda was named after. After being married to Henry Fonda for 13 years, Frances found herself part of a fraught existence. She suffered from debilitating mental illness, and their marriage was on the rocks. Henry requested a divorce so he could marry a woman 23 years his junior. On Frances's 42nd birthday, she tragically took her own life with a razor while living in an institution. Their daughter Jane was only 12 and her brother Peter was only 10. They were told that their mother died of a heart attack. It was only a year later that Jane found out the truth, thanks to a gossip rag. A year after my mother died, I was in study hall and a girlfriend passed me a movie magazine in which it said that my mother had cut her throat, Jane revealed. Jane Fonda didn't have any easy relationship with her late dad. He was a difficult father figure. Henry Fonda was a loner. He was not a Hollywood insider, and he never talked about the business, so she never learned or understood that this business is built on relationships. It wasn't easy for Peter and Jane Fonda to grow up with Father Henry, who became increasingly harder to get along with after their mother took her own life. The children were stuck relying on their stepmothers for warmth. The actress said that Henry was the reason she became an activist. Some of the characters that he loved the most used to speak up for justice. Since she wanted him to love her, Jane tried to copy their righteousness by doing good deeds. When Jane began her activism, he thought she was a foolish and frivolous person. Thankfully, Henry eventually felt proud of her, but never said anything directly to her. Jane Fonda's father was cold and a bully, not to mention a shameless womanizer. But, too young to understand mental illness, his daughter always blamed the alarming behaviour of her manic-depressive mother for the break-up of her parents' marriage. The Fonda family may have had their ups and downs that often found them in the pages of tabloids. Peter and Jane both spent periods of time estranged from their father at various points, but their impact on the film industry is undeniable. No other family of actors has been able to achieve such large and sustained levels of success and acclaim, which is why the Fondas are the first family of film. Henry Fonda died at the age of 77 in 1982. Jane, Peter and little Frances were iced out of their father's will and would not receive any of his estate after he passed away. Instead, Henry left his assets to his widow, Shirley Fonda, and his adopted daughter with Susan Blanchard, Amy Fonda Fishman. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new here, and if you want to support my work, please visit my Patreon page. Now it is your turn. What do you think about the life and legacy of Henry Fonda? As a titan of the silver screen, Henry Fonda seemed to have it all.